Good morning. My name is Dave, one of the pastors here at ACC, and I get the privilege of continuing this message series that we're talking about what the world needs now. And what we are talking about is that what does the world need from the church? In a world of chaos, in a world of division, in a world of everybody just pick their own way, what does the world need from the church? And so Pastor Rob talked in the first week about church, we're called to be bold. What does that look like? And then last week, Pastor Rob talked about godly wisdom. The world needs godly wisdom. They need a church that is bold. And I get the privilege of today talking about that the world needs a church that is faithful. The world needs a church that is faithful. And as I think about faithfulness, as I think about what that looks like in our lives, what does that look like when we put it into practice, I feel like the easiest way that we can define what faithfulness is to define what faithfulness is not. And it just so happens, I've had some very unfaithful experiences this fall from things that are very dear to me, that I care a lot about. And they've just betrayed me left and right, all over the place, all the time. So I love sports, and sports is where I love all sports. I love watching sports, love following it, love understanding it. My first sports love is the Arkansas Razorbacks. I grew up in Arkansas. My grandfather is a diehard Razorback fan, and I love the Arkansas Razorbacks. And so this year, as a Razorbacks fan, there's just always like, we're not Georgia, we're not Alabama, we're not UT this year, where you just think good things are going to happen. When you enter into a season, you have cautious optimism. And so the second game of the year, we had a really good game the first game of the year because we paid somebody to lose. But the second game of the year, we faced Oklahoma State. We weren't ranked. Oklahoma State was ranked. And at the halftime, it's 21-7, and I am over the moon. Like I said, cautious optimism. But after watching this team play for the first half, I'm like, oh, this is going to be an amazing year. Like, I'm in on this. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be really great. Well, that's not how it ended. So we come back into the second half, and then it ends in double overtime by losing 31-39. This is the 4th-and-1 play that we did not get to keep the drive going. And this is just my experience with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Last week, we got demolished by Ole Miss. That was not fun. And so this is just, they were very unfaithful. They just betrayed my heart, betrayed my love. Another team that I love that honestly wasn't expecting to be great, we have a new quarterback. We spent 10 years in Chicago, so I'm a Chicago Bears fan. And we have a brand new quarterback this year. So I was like, there's going to be some kinks. There's going to be some things we have to work out. But I just wanted to see promise, just wanted to see things happen. And I did see that promise at the end of the Chicago-Washington Commanders game. And I watched our team get a touchdown to go up and take the lead in the very last 30 seconds of the game. And it was awesome. And so the Washington Commanders, they get the ball back, and they've got 20 seconds, and it's like, I never see this happen. Like, 20 seconds is no time. How are they gonna do anything? Well, at this play, when they snap the ball, and then the clock goes to 0, they snap the ball, and the quarterback of the Commanders throws the ball from the 35-yard line, which is really far away. And what happens is that he hits this pile of guys right here. The ball bounces off of the pile of guys. And I don't know why the Bears play defense like this, but they do. We just left this guy open, just in the end zone, Hail Mary, who knows what's going to happen to the ball. We just leave the guy open. Guess what? He catches that ball, and they win the game. And so felt absolutely betrayed. My worst betrayal, though, some of you guys are going to enjoy hearing about this betrayal. My worst is the Yankees. I'm a Yankees fan, grew up a Yankees fan, always been a Yankees fan. And the beginning of my Yankees fandom was awesome. We won a bunch of World Series. The tail end of my Yankees fandom has not been great. Like, we're not doing anything. And so this year was like, oh, it's going to be the year. We're going to do something. And then we lose 3 games in a row, and we're awful. And then we came back, and we're like, oh, we're not going to get swept. It's going to be awesome. Maybe we can make it. And then at the beginning of the game, we score 5 runs in the 5th game of the World Series, and we score 5 runs. I'm like, oh, we're going to do it. This is going to be great. And the furniture in my house is really glad that I was driving at the point that this inning happened in history because all of my furniture is still intact. I don't know if it would have been if I had been at home when this happened. So we're up 5-0 with 2 outs in the top of the 5th. Los Angeles, after this hit, goes on to score 3 runs, and then they just kept going. Just errors, not taking care of the baseball, lots of errors, and then all of a sudden we are losing the game and we're out of the World Series. They hurt me deep in my heart. And I know as Astros fans, you're like, yeah, that's right. But they were unfaithful. They did not fulfill the promise of what they were doing. How often do we have that in our lives where there is like a hope or an expectation that we have that something is going to be fulfilled or someone's going to be there or something is going to happen and it just doesn't? And we get crushed. It depends on how much hope we put into it. It depends on what our expectations were. But sometimes we just get crushed because we thought that person was going to come through for us. It may have been a boss, maybe been a coworker, may have been a friend. Maybe it was a parent. Maybe it was a spouse. Maybe it was a family member. Someone that you were supposed to be able to trust. Someone that you were supposed to be able to count on that they were going to be there for you, and they weren't. They were unfaithful. We all experience that. And the reason that we experience it is because we as humans are unfaithful. That is how we operate. That is kind of our natural state, is to be unfaithful, to not always follow through on the things that we say, when there are other things that distract us, other things that pull us away, because we are not perfect. But that's the beauty of the relationship that we have with Jesus, the relationship that we have with God, that when we look at the people in our lives, we don't get a picture of faithfulness for the most part. But when we look at God and we look at Jesus in our lives, we get an incredible picture of faithfulness. We get a picture of someone who, when he makes a promise, he keeps it. Paul tells us in 2 Timothy 2:13, it says, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. If we are faithless, and we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. God is always faithful. If he makes a promise to you, he will keep it. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. And we have this incredible book of scripture that we have where we can see all of the promises that God has made to us and remind ourselves of what they look like. We can look at God's faithfulness. But here's the problem. The world needs faithfulness, but we as humans are inherently unfaithful. So how do we become faithful? How do we present a picture of faithfulness to the people around us? Well, if you can imagine yourself in a world where everybody around you is doing the opposite of what you do, where you have a relationship with God and you follow the things that he has told you, the things that are right, the things that he has put before you. And you live in this world where everybody else does what is right in their own eyes, but you do what is right in God's eyes, and you try to follow him to the best of your ability following. And then imagine this, you are also trying to raise a family in that environment where their friends are wondering, why do you guys do stuff that way? Everybody else does it another way. Why do you guys do stuff that way? In this environment that this guy lived in, can you imagine being in an environment like that and still remaining faithful to God and everything that God had asked him to do? Well, there was a guy named Noah who lived in that very circumstance. In Genesis 6, we get his story. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless amongst the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. See, Noah lived in a time where everything was crazy. Noah lived in a time that the Bible describes as incredibly violent. And all he would do is he was trying to follow God, and he was trying to follow the things that God had asked him to do. And then all of a sudden, God gives him a project. And he's like, hey, Noah, I'm going to give you a project, and it's going to make you look really weird. Nobody's going to believe you in this project. And can you imagine still remaining faithful to God in those circumstances? I love Noah's story. So in chapter 6, verses 11 through 14, we see this. So the Bible describes what it was like. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. And so this is the environment that Noah lives in. All of the people around him, everybody. God's not saying just a few. He's like, everybody had corrupted their ways except for Noah. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them, and I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Now, if you know the story of Noah, you know where we're going. Noah's about to build an ark, and he's going to invite a bunch of animals into it. And if you went to church as a kid and had Sunday school, you heard that story. They probably left this part out. Like that God was just going to wipe everybody out. They really focus on the animals, not so much on the destruction of the entire world. But God says, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. And so God's like, I have to start. This has gone so far that I have to start new. And so he gives him this task. He says, so make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. Now, after this, God gives Noah a bunch of blueprints, a bunch of different ways to build the ark, what the boat should look like, and going through all of that stuff. And then we get into chapter 7, and it says, and Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was faithful. Had this incredible picture of faithfulness in a society that despised it. This incredible picture of faithfulness in a society that wanted nothing to do with it. And so for Noah to follow what God had asked him to do, it's going to make him stand out. It's going to make him look different. It's going to make it so it's hard to have relationships with people and to think about the things that we value. And so as we look at the story of Noah, what I see is that Noah, despite everything that is going on in his life and in his world, he chooses faithfulness over three different things that I think that we all can struggle with. As we think about faithfulness, as we think about remaining faithful to God and following who he is and following what he's asked us, I think there are three areas that we struggle with, and Noah, he faced them all. So the first one is faithfulness over popularity. Noah remained faithful despite everybody else not wanting him to. Have you ever been the person that you're in a group and they are wanting to make a decision that's really bad? I mean, I did this so many times in high school. I did this so many times as a kid. I was in a group. I knew what we were about to do was bad and not good, but the group wanted to do it, so I just went along with it. How many bad decisions in your life have been made because a group of people wanted to do something bad and you didn't want to stand out? Noah, in his life, there's a group of people that want to do bad things, and he's like, but God's called me to something different, and God has called me to a different way, because Noah was not after the people around him's approval. Noah was after only God's approval. And if we're going to remain faithful, we have to get ourselves to a place where we can value God's approval over anybody else's. Faithfulness over popularity. The second one, faithfulness over comfort. So when God gives Noah this project, hey, let's go build a boat. It was not just like a boat to save his family. God gives him a boat that he has to save like all the animals too. And so this boat is massive. The Bible tells us what the size was. It like goes into a lot of detail over what this boat looks like. So this boat was 510 feet long. If that's hard to think about in your mind, 510 feet, just imagine 1.5 football fields put together. You could land 3 NASA space shuttles on the top of this boat, back to back. That is an incredibly big boat, and Noah has to build it. This boat actually, as scientists have studied this boat, it's at the very extremes of what a wooden boat could be and still float. It is crazy how big this boat is. It is 50 feet tall. That is taller than a 4-story building. Remember, he's also building this on dry land in the middle of nowhere. You can imagine what his neighbors thought about that. You have problems with your neighbor when their car breaks down. What about when someone starts building a boat in their backyard? That's the size of a football field and a half. But you can just think about like the size of this task and what that looks like and how uncomfortable it would be to have to sacrifice the things that he would have to give up to be able to build a boat of that magnitude, the time that he would have to invest, the money that he would have to invest, because Noah is not going to be able to build a boat that big by himself. He's going to have to hire some people. He's going to have to find tree trunks that are massive. And he's going to have to find a way to carry that to his boat that he's building on dry land. It is incredibly uncomfortable. And then after that, he has to fill it with animals. You know, the ark was so big, there was so much space in the ark, it was about 450 semi-truck trailers worth of space. It would have held 112,500 sheep. Just imagine how big a space has to be to hold that many sheep. How often have we made decisions to not follow what we know is right because it was uncomfortable, because it put us into a spot that was difficult, because we would have to sacrifice things that we didn't want to give up? How often in our relationship with Jesus has he asked us to give up something that we don't want to? And the way that we think about it is we just kind of rationalize it. We're like, well, God wouldn't ask me to give that up anyways. I'm just going to kind of walk through it. And we begin to choose our comfort over our faithfulness. Well, Noah did not. Noah chose faithfulness over his comfort. And then finally, he chose faithfulness over his circumstances. You just imagine like the roadblocks that building a boat that big is going to run into. Like just how often you are going to come into problems that you don't know how to overcome. How often are you going to have people that are going to come and make fun of you? How often are you going to have people that are going to come and give you a hard time? How often are you going to have people that are going to come and give you a hard time? Do you think that Noah lied when people asked him why he was building this boat? I don't think he did. I think he told them God is about to destroy the world, and if you don't get right with him, he's going to destroy you too. Do you think that makes you a popular person? I don't. And so all of these circumstances are coming against him and trying to stop him from making this boat. How often in our lives have we run into a roadblock? Have we run into a circumstance? Have we run into a sickness? Have we run into a problem with a family member? Have we run into something in our lives that we were starting to follow Jesus, and then all of a sudden this came in, and now we're not, because this is more important, and we're like, God, it's okay, like, you understand, like, this is just too much. I just cannot do this by myself. How often do we allow our circumstances to give us an excuse or allow us to bail out? We know that we don't want to. As a matter of fact, like all of our best stories, all of our best movies are about people who push through difficult circumstances to do something incredible. Braveheart, Saving Private Ryan, Lord of the Rings. Like all these incredible stories about people who sacrifice and do incredible things to save other people or to make a way for other people despite their circumstances. And how many problems in those stories do people run into and they don't give up? But how many problems have we run into in our life that we've allowed to get in our way and allow us to give up? So Noah, he chose faithfulness over popularity. He chose faithfulness over his own comfort. He chose faithfulness over his circumstances. But how? So I hope that you don't feel too beat up at this point. Like, we're talking about faithfulness. I want to remind you that in the beginning I said that we can't do this. That we inherently are not faithful as humans. So how did Noah do this? How did Noah maintain his faithfulness? And we're going to go back to that verse I shared in the beginning because I think it gives us a key and it's an incredible point. This is the account of Noah. Noah's a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. And here is the key. And he walked faithfully with God. Noah walked with God. If we can't be faithful on our own, how are we supposed to be faithful? Just a reminder, Jesus is faithful. And if you want to be faithful, you need Jesus. If you want to have faithfulness in your life, you need to have Jesus in your life. It's the only thing that can change you. Jesus, he put it like this in John 15. He said, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. And so Jesus, he's talking to his disciples. He's telling them, hey, this is how it's going to be when I leave. If you want to bear fruit, if you want, and faithfulness is one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. If you want to bear fruit, if you want to be faithful, how do you do it? You remain in me, and I in you. Let's go back to that verse. Got ahead of myself, stopped in the middle of it. Now I want to finish it out. You will bear much fruit, and apart from me, you can do nothing. So Jesus is telling us, hey, if you want to bear fruit in this life as a Christian, if you want to have faithfulness in your life, you have to be with me. You have to spend time with me. You have to build a relationship with me because you can't do it by yourself. How often have you messed up? How often have you made a decision that you were going to change something in your life for the better, something that was going to draw you closer to your relationship with Jesus? How often have you made that decision in your life and you start on it and you're doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden you mess up and it's gone? And you believe the lie that Satan's telling you that because you messed up that you can't do it. And you believe the lie, and that's not the lie, but the lie is that because you messed up, you'll never do it. But Jesus is like, of course you messed up. You're human. But if you are in me, if you remain in me, I can do this through you. And so my question for us this morning as we think about faithfulness and think about what it is that am I connected to the vine? Because if you aren't, you can't do what Noah did. If you don't have that relationship with Jesus where he is with you, you can't be faithful like Noah was. Your friends, the people around you, you will seek their approval over the approval of God because they're close. And it depends on this distance. If you are close in your relationship with Jesus, you seek his approval. But if you're far away from Jesus and you're only close to your friends, you will seek their approval. And you can't make the decision to be faithful over popularity because you don't have the relationship with Jesus that you need to be able to do that. And how in the world can you expect yourself to choose discomfort over comfort if you don't know the reason? And if you don't have that relationship with Jesus, you won't know the reason. Your circumstances, they will feel so big and they will feel so unovercomable if you don't have a relationship with the one that can tell you that it's just a bump along the road. If we don't have a relationship with Jesus, they're going to just stop us. Faithfulness is so important that Jesus, as we're closing out the New Testament, he's talking to John and he gives this letter to a church. And I love how it talks about what being just kind of middle of the road. What does it look like if we have a relation, if we know who Jesus is, we know all the knowledge, but we don't have the relationship. So we're not cold. We kind of want to be a Jesus follower, but we're not sure about all the other stuff that we'd have to give up to be there. What does that look like? Revelation chapter 3, he's writing this letter to this church, and Jesus says, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were one or the other. I wish you were one or the other. I wish you were cold or hot, because if you were cold, like I could show you the way forward. But if you're just in the middle, you think that you have everything together and you think that you're good, you don't listen to me anymore. And so Jesus is like, I wish you were one or the other. I wish you were either cold or you were hot. So because you are lukewarm, because you're in the middle, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. What a word picture. Faithfulness is so important for us. But it's all about the relationship. Has your relationship with Jesus grown lukewarm? Have you allowed circumstances, have you allowed popularity, have you allowed comfort to distract you from your true purpose? Because the middle is not effective. The world doesn't need us to be middle. The world needs the examples, the people that they can look to say, that's a person that's faithful no matter what anybody says. That's a person that's faithful. They make so many sacrifices. They're not worried about being comfortable. They're only worried about serving God. That's a person who serves God no matter what happens to them, no matter what diagnosis comes their way, no matter what problem happens to them, no matter what faces them in their life. That is a person that serves God no matter what. The world needs those people. The world loves it so much they make stories about it. Needs us to be faithful. The world needs us to be faithful. I heard this phrase at a conference last month, and it's just kind of really helped me about how I think about people and how I think about friends who don't know Jesus and how I think about other drivers in Houston. And it's this phrase, they've been captured by the enemy. Anybody who doesn't have a relationship with Jesus has been captured by the enemy. They are prisoners. They've been deceived by Satan about the things that matter. They've been deceived by Satan about the things that it takes to get ahead and to be prosperous and to be happy. They've been deceived that happiness is something they should be pursuing. They don't know the right way. They don't know what it looks like. How can the people we care about be free if we don't show them the way? You can't do it on your own. But the people that are around you, they need it. How can the people that we care about be free if we don't show them the way? Let's pray. God, we thank you so much.